Hey beautiful people, what's up? It's me, Sunita, back with another video, and today we're going to be talking about PhD funding and fellowships. What is it? How do you go about navigating it? And what do you do if you end up getting into a PhD program but you're not funded? I will give you my advice, so please stay tuned. We'll start with the essentials. I can only talk from my experience and other people that I have spoken to who are in funded, accredited doctoral programs in the United States. I can't tell you about France, I can't tell you about Germany or Brazil. I don't know about that. I know the general framework of sociology programs in the United States, but specifically my own experience with applying to grad schools, getting in, and then also being funded in my own program. The way that it works is PhD programs pay graduate students or PhD students who get accepted into the program to be students, to conduct their research, to complete their qualifications and their requirements to earn their degree. In exchange, typically, you are required to remain in good standing. I believe in my program you cannot get below a B in any class. And in addition, sometimes you're required to teach. The teaching load changes depending on what institution that you're in. So for example, at my university, University of Pennsylvania, we had a 4-semester teaching requirement, which ended up being 2 years, because we have 2 semesters per school year, and then you teach your second and your third year. So that's my school. I have heard that New York University sociology PhD students do not have to teach. That was several years ago when I started my program. I'm not sure if that's still the same. Let me know if anybody does in the comments. But I've also seen that in other institutions, there's a far shorter teaching requirement. So only having to teach for 1 year instead of 2 years, etc. So it all depends on the institution that you're applying to. And this is information that you can easily find out by going to the website or emailing an administrator, emailing a professor, or my thing when I was applying is email other students. There's a lot of information that administrators and professors may not know necessarily because they don't have to teach or that they may not want to divulge. But a student is going to tell you the truth about a lot of things. They might share the stipend with you. They might share the healthcare benefits that you receive. They might share things that are generally kept secret until after you get into the program, because things also do shift and change. Like for example, my stipend has increased. I was pleasantly surprised to find out this year since I started graduate school, but because things have changed, they have been kind enough to increase the amount of our stipend. So what that means is every month I get money deposited into my bank account, which is supposed to be enough to cover my living expenses and anything that I might need for school.
Why you always lying? Oh my God.
And that goes for the duration of the school year. So let me go back a little bit and talk about what funding packages almost always do include. Specifically in my case, it always includes your tuition and all your fees and healthcare. That is a standard that everyone gets, which is really great, but every program isn't going to have that. So they might say we only cover your tuition for 3 years, or we only cover healthcare for 5 years. I don't know anyone whose program doesn't include healthcare, but hey, there might be, and there probably are programs out there that do not offer healthcare to their doc students. So that's something that you definitely want to find out maybe before applying, or consider that carefully if you're accepted. Because if you're in a program for 7 years because it's taking you longer to finish than you thought, not having funding is going to be a really big thing for you. The next thing that you will want to be aware of if you're looking into applying for PhD programs and trying to figure out the funding package is external funding or fellowships. So the reason that I applied to get a Fulbright fellowship, and I did succeed in applying for that fellowship, was because I knew I wanted to go abroad to study, but I wanted to carry out my funding longer. So when I got accepted into my university, they said you get 5 years of guaranteed funding. After that, you're going to have to look to other means to pay for your schooling. I knew that by securing a Fulbright grant, I would be able to put my last year funding on hold while I finished my Fulbright. So now I'm still able to receive healthcare benefits, my tuition paid for, and my stipend because I still have my final year of funding. I hope that makes sense. So what is a fellowship? People are asking me that. Essentially, a fellowship is like a scholarship, an organizing body that gives you money to complete your research or to complete something scholarly or academic in nature, typically. But there are also, arts fellowships and all kinds of other fellowships out there, but the ones that I'm talking about, Fulbright and the National Science Foundation, the Social Science Research Council, what are some other ones? The Ford Foundation. These are all foundations that you apply to in the hopes that you can get external funding. So in addition to the funding that you'll get from your university to do your studies, which is really dope. I don't even know how you can manage that in New York. But some fellowships can't be combined. So if you win a Fulbright, you can't also keep the money from the Ford, that kind of thing. All of that stuff is going to be made clear when you go to the website and you check out the info that they have. The amount depends. I don't know offhand how much you get for the Ford Foundation if you win that fellowship versus Fulbright versus National Science Foundation. It all depends on a lot of different factors. I have seen that some fellowships can give you $5,000, and then some fellowships can give you $30,000 or more for the entire year. So you have to look at those sources, go to those websites, and figure out how much money you would be getting. I will also say, sometimes your university will say, hey, you got this external funding. That means that you don't have to teach or something like that. Things are flexible, and it's always good to get more money because honestly, the highest I've ever heard for a sociology PhD total for the year is like $35,000. $35,000 is not a lot of money in modern America, especially if you're living in a big city. Funding packages and type of school. That is a big one that I was really surprised by. There's always rankings for whatever the best, research one or top research universities and their programs for sociology. Every year it changes a little bit, but there's kind of a top 10 that doesn't shift. My school, University of Pennsylvania, is usually in the top 10. University of Michigan is usually in the top 5. University of Michigan, because it's a public institution, it cannot afford, so they say, to give graduate students as much money in a stipend. So I know people who are in other universities that are public universities, but they're great institutions, but their monthly stipend is only about $2,000. And then I know people whose stipend is $3K plus. So all of that stuff is going to be dependent upon which university that you're actually accepted into. It's usually hard to find out. Please don't ask me all the different numbers. I don't know them, and then also they change. Like I said, the amount that I'm getting now is not the amount that I was getting before, and that is a very welcome change. If you want to be brave and email people at universities and ask them how much they're getting, I think that's great. I also know that website, the Grad Cafe or something like that, people will post how much their funding package is and what is included in that funding package on there sometimes. Okay, external funding is grants. Grants are usually a lot smaller in amount than fellowships, and typically they can be just offered by your school, maybe a local organization, maybe a couple thousand here, $500 there. I have won several travel grants from my university, so there are different organizations that offer money, and I sent them my presentation and the conference that I was going to be presenting at, and they gave me, $200, $300. Once I think I got $1,000. It's usually not enough to cover the cost of a flight, of hotel rooms, of food for 4 or 5 days, but it is nice to offset the cost. The difficult thing though is that they usually want to reimburse you, so you have to do this whole process of sending your receipts and uploading it onto some online application and then waiting for them to approve it and all that kind of stuff. That can be really hard because sometimes you don't have the money up front. And when I was doing Fulbright, I started to see all of these auxiliary costs that I was not aware of, like having to pay visa, the flight, booking my apartment and all that stuff. So it's really good to be able to save money in case that you need it for these kinds of instances. Last thing, what do you do if you get accepted to a program or you're in a program and they cut your funding, or you know it's not fully funded, or you're only funded for a year, etc.? My advice will never be to go into significant amounts of debt to get a doctoral degree. The reason is because there are many programs where you do not have to go into debt to get a doctoral degree. I'm sure that in very small cities where the cost of living is much lower, it's difficult but affordable to be able to get paid a couple $1,000s a month for rent and food and all that stuff, and then, you know, maybe have a side hustle or something like that. This unfortunately is modern America, right? We're always hustling. There's never really enough to make ends meet. But I do not think that you need to take out $20K, $30K, $40K, $50K per year or total to get a PhD. There are programs out there for you to be able to avoid doing that. Unless you can pay for it out of pocket, or you know you're going to be able to pay for it, I don't think it's a good idea when there's so many opportunities to get funded. If you only get accepted to the school where you're getting a half a year funding or $500 a month or something like that, where it's not going to be livable, really truly sit down and think, why is it that I am so dead set on going into this program that I am willing to take on this amount of debt? What does it mean that I would be willing to take on this amount of debt? And not only that, but some people enter into grad school with previous debt from undergrad, from a master's degree. So you really want to think about that. I wouldn't ever advise anyone to do it. I think there are a lot of ways to strengthen your application outside of a program to get into a good program later. And maybe I'll do a video on that. Let me know if you guys want me to do a video on that. But if you get into a program and they ain't got the money, bye Felicia. Think about how can you strengthen your application, what can you do in the interim. Think very long and hard before going into that amount of debt. It's just not worth it. You can get into a program like the program that I'm in, or a similar program where you are not rich by any means, but your healthcare is paid for, your tuition is paid for, and you have ample opportunity to apply for external funding sources like a Fulbright, like the Ford Foundation, stuff like that. I feel like I did that all in one breath. Alright, cool. So my camera is going to die, but thank y'all so much for watching. Please let me know in the comments what other kind of videos you want to see me make. I'm really enjoying getting back into doing the YouTube thing because I know that each of these videos is helping someone, and that just means so much to me. I'm just saying. I'm done now. Thank you guys so much for watching, and take care of yourselves. Peace. Also, go vote. If you have not registered to vote, volunteer to drive people to the polls, okay? Do whatever you can. If you are registered, please vote. There's lots of other ways that we can be engaged as American citizens. I'm not one of those people who thinks voting is the only way we're going to change society at all. But I do think that it's one of the things, the tools in our arsenal that in this time period particularly could be a huge and powerful move for us. Not just in terms of the long-term consequences, but in the short-term morale, you know, lifting us to feeling hopeful and remaining optimistic about the fact that we have the power to change society for the better.
To love. Love is a condition so powerful. It may be that which holds the stars in the firmament.
That's what I feel in my heart.